At 4:23 this morning, Israeli time, 11:23 p.m. Eastern, Iran launched a coordinated ballistic missile strike against Nevatim Airbase in the Negev desert. Nevatim is the home of Israel's entire F-35 Adir fleet, Israel's most advanced stealth fighters. The aircraft that give Israel the capability to strike deep into Iranian territory undetected are based at Nevatim. And at 4:23 a.m., Iranian missiles hit that base. Initial IDF reports confirm 11 Israeli Air Force personnel killed, 23 wounded, and according to satellite imagery, at least 3 F-35 aircraft destroyed on the ground with 4 more damaged. Subscribe to this channel immediately because what I am about to walk you through is not a regional skirmish. This is Iran executing a precision strike designed to degrade Israel's most advanced offensive capability. This is the most significant direct Iranian attack on Israeli sovereign territory in modern history. And this is the United States now facing whether a strike on an ally's F-35 base triggers defense commitments. Turn on notifications because what happens in the next 72 hours will determine whether this remains bilateral or escalates into regional war involving the United States and every major power with interests in the Middle East. Here's what happened during the strike. At 4:17 a.m., Israeli radar detected launches from 3 Iranian locations. The missiles were K-bar Shekhan medium-range ballistic missiles, range 1,450 kilometers, 650-kilogram warheads with precision guidance. Launches from sites near Tabriz, Kermanshah, and Semnan. Flight time 12 minutes. At 4:21 a.m., Israeli air defense engaged. David Sling destroyed 2 incoming missiles. Arrow 3 destroyed 1 more. 3 intercepted, but Israeli sources confirm at least 4 missiles penetrated defenses. At 4:23 a.m., impact at Nevatim. The missiles struck hardened aircraft shelters on the western edge of the base where F-35s are maintained and stored. The force of the explosions was sufficient to collapse reinforced concrete structures. Video obtained by news agencies shows secondary explosions, likely munitions or fuel igniting after the initial strikes. At 4:31 a.m., 8 minutes after impact, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened an emergency security cabinet meeting. At 4:47 a.m., the IDF issued a statement confirming the strike, confirming casualties, and stating that Israel reserves the right to respond at a time and place of its choosing. At 5:15 a.m., the White House issued a statement, quote, "The United States condemns Iran's unprovoked attack on Israeli territory. We stand with Israel and are in close consultation with Israeli leadership regarding appropriate responses." That statement uses the word unprovoked, which is significant because it frames the strike as aggression, not retaliation. At 5:34 a.m., Iran's foreign ministry released a statement through state media. Quote, "The Islamic Republic conducted a legitimate defensive operation targeting the airbase used by Israel to plan and execute strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities and Iranian personnel in Syria." This action was proportional, precise, and defensive under international law, and that is Iran claiming the strike was self-defense, not escalation. Hit that like button right now if you understand what just happened. Iran just executed a ballistic missile strike against the base that houses Israel's F-35 fleet. The algorithm decides what breaks through. You decide whether this analysis reaches people who need to see it, because what I am showing you is a calculated Iranian operation designed to demonstrate capability while providing a legal justification framework that complicates international response. At 6 a.m. Israeli time, the IDF released damage assessments. 11 confirmed dead, all Air Force personnel, including 2 pilots, 3 maintenance crew, 4 air traffic controllers, 2 base security, 23 wounded, 5 critical. Satellite analysis confirms 3 F-35I aircraft completely destroyed, worth $100 million each. 4 additional F-35s damaged, extent unknown, likely requiring months of repair. Israel operates 39 F-35I Adir fighters total. This strike eliminated or damaged 18% of that fleet in one attack. The strike also destroyed 2 hardened aircraft shelters, damaged the base's primary fuel depot, and damaged radar and communications infrastructure. The strategic implications are immediate. Nevatim is located in the Negev, approximately 350 kilometers from the Iranian border, 700 kilometers from Tehran. The base was chosen for F-35 operations specifically because of its distance from potential threats and its hardened facilities. If Iran can successfully strike Nevatim with ballistic missiles, Iran can strike any Israeli military installation. At 7:23 a.m., Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant made a televised statement, quote, Iran has crossed a red line. This was not a strike on infrastructure. This was not a strike on proxies. This was a direct military attack on Israeli Defense Forces personnel and on the aircraft that defend this nation. Israel will respond with overwhelming force at a time of our choosing. Iran will pay a heavy price. Drop a comment right now. Tell me whether you think Israel's response will be conventional strikes on Iranian military targets or something more escalatory. I am reading every response because this question is being debated inside the Israeli war cabinet right now. At 8:15 a.m., the Pentagon issued a statement, quote, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The United States reaffirms its ironclad commitment to Israel's security. We are coordinating closely on defensive measures and are prepared to support Israel as appropriate. The phrase ironclad commitment is significant, but the statement does not specify what support as appropriate means. Does it mean intelligence sharing? Does it mean additional air defense systems? Does it mean direct U.S. military participation in Israeli retaliation? That ambiguity is intentional. At 9 a.m., the UN Security Council convened an emergency session at Israel's request. Israel's UN ambassador presented satellite imagery of the damage and stated, this is an act of war. Iran has committed an armed attack on Israeli sovereign territory. Under Article 51 of the UN Charter, Israel has the inherent right to self-defense, and we will exercise that right. Iran's ambassador responded, Israel has conducted dozens of strikes on Iranian assets in Syria, has assassinated Iranian scientists, has sabotaged Iranian nuclear facilities. What occurred this morning was a measured response to years of Israeli aggression. Iran acted in self-defense. Subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already, because what I am about to show you is the military, diplomatic, and congressional response options that are now being debated in Washington and Jerusalem. At 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, President Biden convened a National Security Council meeting. Attendees included Vice President Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Defense Secretary Austin, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, CIA Director Bill Burns, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General C.Q. Brown. According to sources familiar with the meeting, the discussion centered on three questions. One, what is the appropriate level of U.S. support for an Israeli retaliatory strike? Two, does the U.S. have obligations under defense agreements to participate directly in Israeli military action? Three, what are the risks of Iranian escalation to broader regional war? Here's what we are watching for over the next 72 hours. 6 indicators that will tell us how this crisis unfolds. Indicator 1, does Israel strike back within 24 hours or wait to build a larger operation? If retaliation comes quickly, it suggests limited strikes on Iranian military targets. If Israel waits, it suggests preparation for a more comprehensive campaign. Indicator 2, does the United States provide intelligence or logistical support for Israeli strikes? If U.S. reconnaissance aircraft, tanker aircraft, or AWACS appear in the region supporting Israeli operations, it signals direct U.S. involvement short of combat. Indicator 3, do Iranian proxy forces activate? If Hezbollah launches rockets from Lebanon, if Houthi forces in Yemen increase attacks on shipping, if Iraqi militias strike U.S. bases, it indicates Iran is coordinating a multi-front response. Indicator 4, does Congress demand authorization for any U.S. military action? If members of Congress invoke the War Powers Act and demand votes before U.S. forces participate, it constrains executive flexibility. Indicator 5, do Gulf Arab states allow Israel to use their airspace for strikes on Iran? If Saudi Arabia, UAE, or Jordan permit Israeli overflights, it enables deeper strikes, but also exposes those countries to Iranian retaliation. Indicator 6, does Iran make any diplomatic overtures, or does Tehran double down? If Iranian leadership signals willingness to de-escalate, crisis management becomes possible. If Iran threatens further strikes, escalation continues. Here are the 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, limited Israeli retaliation and de-escalation. Israel conducts precision strikes on Iranian military targets, likely missile production facilities or Revolutionary Guard bases in Syria. The strikes are significant, but not existential to the Iranian regime. Iran absorbs the strikes, declares victory for having hit Nevatim, and both sides step back. The United States facilitates de-escalation through back-channel diplomacy. This is the controlled escalation scenario where both sides demonstrate capability but avoid wider war. Scenario 2, major Israeli military campaign, and regional escalation. Israel launches a comprehensive air campaign targeting Iranian nuclear facilities, missile sites, and command infrastructure. The operation involves hundreds of sorties over multiple days. Iran responds by activating Hezbollah, attacking U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, and potentially targeting Gulf shipping. The United States is drawn into defensive operations to protect its forces and allies. Oil prices spike. Regional instability intensifies, but the conflict remains below the threshold of full-scale war. This is the prolonged crisis scenario where both sides escalate but maintain some control. Scenario 3, Iranian nuclear threshold and strategic collapse. Israel strikes Iranian nuclear facilities with bunker-busting munitions. Iran interprets this as an existential threat and retaliates with everything available, including potential acceleration toward weaponization. The conflict spirals into direct U.S.-Iran hostilities. Regional powers choose sides. The global economy faces energy shock. This is the nightmare scenario where escalation dynamics overwhelm crisis management. Subscribe right now. Like this video, comment with your prediction which scenario happens. I am tracking all three. And as events unfold, you will see the analysis here immediately. Let me show you why this strike is different from previous Iran-Israel confrontations. In April 2024, Iran launched 300 drones and missiles at Israel in response to an Israeli strike on an Iranian consulate. That attack was telegraphed and designed to be largely intercepted. It was performative escalation. Today's strike was different. 4 ballistic missiles, minimal warning, specifically targeting Israel's most valuable military asset. The strike was designed to succeed, and it did. The Nevatim strike breaks the pattern. This represents a shift in Iranian willingness to engage Israel directly. What I know for certain right now, at 4:23 a.m. Israeli time, Iranian missiles struck Nevatim Airbase. 11 Israeli personnel are dead. At least 3 F-35 aircraft are destroyed, 4 damaged. Israel has vowed overwhelming retaliation. The United States has reaffirmed commitment to Israel, but has not specified support details. The UN Security Council is debating without consensus. The next 72 hours will determine whether this remains bilateral or expands into regional war that draws in American forces, destabilizes energy markets, and potentially approaches nuclear dimensions. The F-35s destroyed at Nevatim represent degradation of Israeli offensive capability. Replacing those aircraft takes years. Repairing damaged ones takes months. Israel's ability to strike deep into Iran is reduced, which is precisely what Iran intended. But degrading Israeli capability also increases Israeli incentive to strike Iranian nuclear and missile programs before those capabilities can be used again. The strike may have achieved tactical success, but created strategic incentive for escalation. This is not about which side you support. This is about understanding that the Middle East is closer to wider war than at any point since 1973. The dynamics that prevented full-scale Israel-Iran conflict for decades are being tested. Stay with this channel. Turn on notifications. When Israel retaliates, when Iran responds, when the United States decides its level of involvement, you will see the analysis here. This is not over. This is Iran and Israel moving from shadow war to direct confrontation, and what happens next determines whether the Middle East remains in managed tension or descends into the war both sides have avoided for 45 years.